When you open the box for a brand new graphics card, the most important piece of hardware inside isn't made by the name on the box. Whether you buy an RTX 5070 or an RX 9000 from Asus, MSI, or Palit, the actual silicon engine driving your frame rate is the exact same piece of technology. This matrix lays it out. The silicon brain is identical, but sold in drastically different physical wrappers. Why does one demand a massive bracket and a $100 premium, while another fits in your palm at base price? You're just buying a heatsink and fans. Choosing a GPU brand is strictly an exercise in resource allocation. You have to decide if you want to trade pure performance per dollar for specialized physical solutions, like acoustic silence, case compatibility, or aesthetic flair. If your sole priority is securing the exact performance of the silicon without subsidizing a company's marketing department, you look at the pragmatists. Manufacturers like Palit and ASRock consistently hit base retail price points. They deliver the raw, intended performance of the chip with zero unnecessary markups. The trade-off for that pure financial value is a highly utilitarian physical design, and these parts generally hold lower resale value compared to the legacy premium brands. If you want a middle ground, Gigabyte's gaming OC line is a heavily relied upon standard. They use a wind force cooling design, where the middle fan spins in reverse, keeping the airflow smooth across the heatsink to reduce turbulence. The primary drawback of adopting the Gigabyte ecosystem is their software control center, which is historically buggy and frustrating to manage. You also have to watch out for false value. MSI's Ventus series sits at a budget price point, but it offsets that low initial cost by cutting corners on materials, specifically swapping out metal backplates for plastic, which actively hurts heat dissipation. True pragmatism requires balancing of zero markup price tag against actual component quality. Trying to save $20 at the absolute bottom tier usually costs you critical cooling capability. When you build a small form factor PC, the physical space inside your case strictly dictates every component choice you make. Zotac dominates this specific niche. Their twin-edge cards successfully cram high-end silicon into tiny footprints made for living room builds. But smaller dimensions mean smaller heat sinks. To keep dense hardware from overheating, those fans have to spin significantly faster, resulting in a much louder acoustic profile under heavy load. If that noise is a deal breaker, MSI's Gaming X Slim series takes the opposite approach. They sacrifice a little more case space to achieve near-silent operation without throttling your frame rate. This technical cross-section shows how cooling efficiency actually works. A highly refined dual-fan setup with densely packed heat pipes easily pulls more heat away from the chip than a cheap, sparse triple-fan cooler used for marketing points. Physical space and acoustic silence are inversely correlated variables. Optimizing your build for one will almost always force a compromise on the other. On the other side of the market are the Team Red specialists, manufacturers who dedicate all their engineering resources strictly to AMD Radeon chips. Sapphire is widely considered the gold standard for these users. Because they help AMD design the reference boards, they provide the most stable BIOS tuning and the highest overall build quality available. XFX takes a different path with their Speedster series. They drop aggressive RGB lighting entirely for a highly effective minimalist design that prioritizes straight-through airflow. By utilizing large cutouts in an elongated backplate, cool air bypasses the PCB entirely and flows straight up toward your CPU exhaust zone. But that long backplate creates a severe physical trade-off. These cards are notoriously massive, frequently failing to fit inside standard mid-tower cases. PowerColor's Red Devil line serves as the heavy-duty extreme, offering massive power limits and a dual BIOS switch for builders looking to push 4K overclocking limits. Choosing an AMD specialist brand requires rigorous preparation. You have to double-check your physical chassis clearance and your power supply limits before committing to these unique, oversized designs. At the very edges of the market, you find two absolute extremes: the luxury enthusiast overclocker and the sterile multi-GPU professional. The Asus ROG Strix and Galax Hall of Fame tiers represent the luxury side. Users pay heavy financial premiums for wildly overbuilt cooling, rare white printed circuit boards, and built-in LCD screens. The practical reality is that this massive, expensive level of cooling and power delivery is almost never actually required by the underlying GPU chip to function at its peak. Contrast that excess with PNY's XLR8 series. They deliver highly reliable, strictly standardized 2-slot designs based purely on NVIDIA's reference specifications. Their complete lack of gamer aesthetics makes them the perfectly boring choice for dense, multi-GPU workstations that simply cannot afford to crash during long renders. At these extreme ends of the spectrum, buyers are paying purely for niche validation, either the bragging rights of high overclocking margins or the ironclad guarantee of continuous workstation uptime. This flowchart pulls everything together. To decisively choose a brand, you need to define your primary building constraint. If you are constrained by physical space, you route directly to Zotac for an ITX build, or PNY for dense multi-slot systems. If you are constrained strictly by budget, skip the cooling markups and look at baseline models from Palit, ASRock, or the Gigabyte Gaming OC. If you prioritize a silent environment above all else, your path leads to the MSI Gaming X series. If you are an AMD loyalist, split your choice between Sapphire for overall quality or XFX for raw airflow. And if you have an unlimited budget seeking maximum aesthetics and power limits, you branch off to Asus, Galax, PowerColor, or Colorful. The easiest way to choose isn't looking at arbitrary internet tier lists. It's actually taking out a tape measure and checking your case dimensions. Because the silicon engine is identical, your physical case and your budget must dictate the wrapper you choose. Drop a comment with your specific CPU and case size below so we can verify clearance before you buy, and subscribe for more straightforward hardware guides.